Hello you lovely lot and welcome to a new video. My name is Katie and we might as well have a little chat about the whole art block thing that's been going on just lately, as well as talking about the process of the two pictures I'm going to be doing for this video. I'll be really honest with you though, if you're looking for answers on how to get rid of art block, then maybe this might not be the video for you. However, I can talk about my own experiences and ways I try to overcome it, as well as maybe just accept that not every picture is necessary to do straight away and mistakes can be made, and maybe the hands and the brain don't want to cooperate and maybe it's just time to try a little something else or step back, but I'll get into that as the video progresses. I also want to start off by saying a massive thank you to my lovely viewers and community. You guys are so lovely and I'm so lucky to just be able to read your comments. It does bring some encouragement and some smiles to my face, especially when I don't feel like drawing. So thank you so much, I do appreciate it, and I'm not going to mention names, but I'm sure you'll notice some of the bits of advice that you've given to me which I've found really helpful. I'm going to mention those in this video too, so hopefully that will also be passed on to other people, and it might help, it might not, and hey, this video just might be a lovely bit of company whilst you're doing your own project. Now, if you've been a bit of a long-time viewer, you'll know I guess I'm a little bit of a chameleon with my styles and the different mediums I use. Sometimes it kind of just spills out and I don't really know where this picture is coming from. Not this one on screen, I'll explain later. But when I create, sometimes it's quite spontaneous and it's quite lovely and it's very fulfilling, and that's when it's going great. And there are other times as well where there are external influences, and that could be in the form of other artists. For this instance, I seem to be going through a little bit of a Aubrey Beardsley phase. You could say this was kick-started by me trying to tidy up my workspace. It's still a mess, but whilst I was rifling through various art books that I'd got, as well as dead and abandoned sketchbooks and unfinished art pieces, I happened to come across a really old calendar that somebody who I used to work with many years ago gave to me because they kind of saw that I had a bit of a Aubrey Beardsley twang about my work at the time then. As well as looking through all of my old stuff, I also had a little rummage through the different mediums I've got. I'd been neglecting my liner pens for a while, quite a few of them have died during these two pieces and that's okay, but whilst rifling through these little goodies, I also found a little treasure that I hadn't used for years. For some reason, I keep wanting to call it a Zig Kuretake brush pen, but it's not. It is the Pentel GFKP Japan brush pen. It's got cartridges in it. I believe it uses a carbon black ink, and I completely forgot I had these. I've got two of them. They're both the same. I'd bought one and then I was gifted one at Christmas a couple of years later, and I've had these for a really long time. And I also remembered just how engrossed in a piece I'd get when I used them, and I suppose combining this with the calendar, I thought, well, I suppose I could have a little try and just see if it gets other creative juices going. Now, if you're a bit of a long-time viewer, and thank you very much if you are, much appreciated, you'll notice that I am a bit of a chameleon with my art style. I tend not to settle on one thing for too long, and I don't know why, it's just how it's always been. I enjoy that. I obviously return back to certain processes and certain mediums, but yeah, I'm not very consistent with sticking with one style, at least in my opinion anyway. Maybe with the exception of the gouache dragons I'm doing at the moment, pretty much everything else kinda kind of looks different. I wouldn't say it looks like it's been done by someone different. I can definitely tell they're one of mine, but they still look different. And when I'm creating a piece, I'm usually thinking about 2 or 3 pieces into the future whilst I'm creating the piece. And it's weird, it's probably not a very healthy way to approach things, but at the moment that just seems to be how I've rolled for a long time, and I guess maybe just how I roll. And that's okay, that's okay. There are peaks and troughs of creativity, and I suppose that kind of affects it if I think about it. Both of the pictures on this video I'm really happy with. I love the fact that I managed to get quite engrossed in these. I'm glad one managed to follow another, even though it kind of remained in the same style. And hey, you never know, I might turn this into a triptych, who knows, but it's staying at 2 for now. But for me, this was like a comfort style, and I mean, I do quite like a bit of Art Nouveau, and I absolutely love doing really, really fine details, and that's great, but it's really time consuming, and I think sometimes I get a little bit too carried away and a little bit too engrossed in something like this, and I don't really think about pictures to do in the future. I guess that might not be a bad thing, but I also still want to be creative after I've finished a piece. It's a little bit like when you've read a really good book and you've read that last page and you're like, that was really good, I really enjoyed it, but what next? Can the next book possibly compare? Will it be better? Will I even find another book? You know, it's those kinds of ridiculous questions. And another thing as well, and I guess we'll do a little food comparison here because we can all relate to a bit of food. Say there's a particular food stuff that I am obsessing over. It's strawberries at the moment. Don't ask. Just need strawberries. I'll go mad on them for a week, then I won't want to touch them again. But I won't want to really replace it with anything either. And you could say that kind of applies to the art style. At the moment, I'm going mad for this particular style on these 2 pieces, but as I came towards the end of the second piece, I'm like, I don't really want to do any more, but I still want to do something. And this to me is what art block is. It's going mad on one particular style or one particular medium, and then pretty much exhausting it and sort of floating around wondering what to do next. Do I do another one of these, but I'm not going to enjoy it as much, it's probably not going to be a very strong piece, or do I take a little gamble and try something else? And yeah, I don't mind the failure as such, but when it doesn't feel productive, and sometimes it doesn't, again, that to me is what the art block is. And it's quite hard to describe it, and I'm sure you guys have probably been in that position yourself where you just don't know what to draw, or maybe a lot of your work is failing, and again, it's not in that productive way where you can think, well, okay, I can take parts of this which I liked and apply it on my next attempt, or I learnt something from this. Sometimes it just doesn't happen, and it's not even a perfectionist thing, it's just I don't know, let's refer back to food. We've burnt the toast 4 times in a row, and maybe toast isn't what we really want. And I think being able to pinpoint that is probably a good starting point. And for me, I think taking a little break away from doing some art and not putting any pressure on myself, and knowing that you guys are very, very cool about me not having to throw out tons of videos all the time. I'd rather throw out something good. Don't get me wrong, I really don't mind sharing my mistakes. I mean, if you've watched that Upcrate video, I was not happy with that at all, but that's okay. It was still a learning process. And you know what though? That's okay. That's okay. Maybe it is okay to step away from your art desk or your art sofa, as some of you have mentioned before, and just try something different. And I've done that. Nothing creative, but perhaps just not even searching for any inspiration really, and just appreciating what's around me. So it's spring, and I really hate summer, but I'm okay with spring. The temperature's okay, things are coming into bloom, and it's actually been quite nice to be able to notice that a little bit more rather than just sort of frantically walking the dog and then coming back. It's actually been quite nice to just take him for a really good walk, watch him observe nature, I guess, as well as observing it myself. And it's been nice to just pause and do that. It's also been quite nice as well to, I guess, pursue other interests I've got at the moment. I'm a little bit partial to video games, and I spent not an excessive amount playing it, but I definitely put a couple more hours in than usual, and it might not seem very productive, but that's okay. Maybe to be productive you don't need to be productive all the time. Does that make sense? Another wonderful suggestion was to change up my music playlist, and this is going to sound so weird, but I don't really listen to a great deal of music while I'm working. I actually find it a little bit distracting sometimes, especially when stuff's got lyrics in it. However, my love for a specific computer game at the moment does happen to come with a soundtrack with no lyrics, and I've very much been enjoying that, and oh my gosh, they're releasing some more tracks as well this week, so that's good. And it was also suggested to listen to some old stuff, and yeah, I've got a bit of a guilty pleasure of 90s pop. I might have brushed it off at the time, but it's a bit of a soundtrack to my youth, and I'm quite happy to just dip my toe in a little bit there, and it's been quite fun listening to some of that. Maybe not so much whilst I've been working, but you know what, if I've got it on the randomizer, it's going to sneak in, and I'm okay with that. And that was a great suggestion, so thank you. Looking through old sketchbooks has also been quite good, and I mean, I've really got a lot of sketchbooks through many eras, and some of them are these beautifully presented, wonderful little masterpieces that everyone shows on YouTube. I tend not to do that much. I don't really do sketchbook tours. I kind of just fill a whole sketchbook in on a video, and then that's kind of it. It's not very often I'll go through a sketchbook. But I do have a couple that I'm particularly proud of. I posted a concertina one a few years ago, and I did another one just before that one, and these are really old drawings, but it was kind of nice looking at it and remembering the processes, and they're very detailed, fine line drawing pictures, which I think possibly as well kind of made me pursue this particular style of drawing. And that was good, but I feel like I still need to change things up a little bit at the moment. I don't want to get too sucked into doing the heavily detailed stuff, because it's just very time consuming, and I do get a little bit, I do get the lazies as I go along, and that's not a bad idea, but when I've not got anything to do after that, I feel like I'm just rushing a picture just to get it done without possibly having anything in its place. I feel like I need to be productive, if that makes any sense. I feel like I'm really waffling here as well, but I think that's okay. Organising the art supplies is a great way to kickstart stuff. And again, as I mentioned earlier, this is a good example of at least encouraging me to create. It's actually been quite nice sorting through a lot of my supplies at the moment. I've been looking through a lot of my watercolours, and I'm sort of staring at them thinking I might just have to go there, or maybe some watercolour ink mediums, because I like the transparency of them. So maybe in the future I might do a couple of pieces using the watercolour mediums as well as the brusho, and I might even have a little play with the Viviva and the peerless watercolour sheets again, because they're just fun. Of course, making sure you've got a nice workspace is very important. It is very good to have a clear space, I guess, but I'll be honest with you, I kind of thrive in the chaos. If it's a little bit too tidy, then my mind becomes a little bit chaotic instead, and the ideas just don't really spring from that. So yeah, it's a bit of a tricky one, that is. I do tidy up occasionally, but do you find that you can never find anything once it's all been put away? Does that make sense? I'm far too ashamed to share a picture right now, but my room's pretty bad. My desk It's been worse, but it's still pretty bad, and I just have piles of stuff surrounding me, and cupboard doors open, and piles of junk hanging out of that, and I know I should just push them in there and shut the door and it'll look all tidy again, but I think even that is a stretch too far to being organised. It'll be like out of sight, out of mind. I just won't think about it. So if it's kind of on view, it might spur me on a little bit. I'll be honest though, it really could do with being a bit more tidier in here. It's like a trip hazard at times, so yeah, tidy your art space up now and then if you feel the need to at least. Don't get taken over by it too much though. A little bit of chaos is okay. But alas, I really do feel like I'm in waffle territory there, so I'm going to talk a little bit about what I've done on screen. The techniques on both PCs are pretty much the same. I've used the Pentel brush pen to fill in large areas because it's just very easy to do that, and it's quite satisfying to watch the ink dry as you drag the brush across the page. The paper I've used is the Stonehenge hot press watercolour. I really don't recommend it. I've tried to like this paper, and I have on one or two occasions, but I think after doing these pictures on here, I don't like it. It actually really doesn't take very inky ink. That doesn't make sense, but it doesn't take it very well. It tends to bleed quite a lot. It's not too bad with the fine liners, as you can see now, but I did find with the brush, and it didn't even spill out an excessive amount of ink there, but I could see it sort of threading through the fibres, and it did create some issues along the way where I had to go around and tidy it up a little bit with the liner pen, so I really don't recommend it. I guess it is for watercolours, but to be honest, I kind of find the same with that, and when I'm using a hot press paper, I want details, I want it to be crisp. If I wanted something a little bit looser, then obviously I'd use a cold press or a rough surface, so I guess that's just how I roll here. But yeah, in some instances it just didn't work great. With that side though, I really did enjoy using this brush pen. I love the variety of textures and different line thicknesses that you can get with this, and it's not the most pinpoint accurate device to draw fine lines with, but if you use the very tip of that brush, you really can get some ridiculously fine lines that could almost rival a 0.05 fine line pen. So that's definitely worth bearing in mind. If you've got one of these, it's not necessarily good just for splattering the ink on the page. It's actually pretty good for doing some nice unique details there. And as you can see with the water reflections in this piece and the previous one, you can get some really, really nice, irregular, but still making sense kind of textures there. Of course though, for those finer details and perhaps just making areas a little bit tidier, then the Unipin and the Sakura Micron pens were perfect for that. I avoided using the Faber-Castell ones because they contain Indian ink, and that just has a slight colour tone to it compared to your carbon black inks, and I'm just going to refer to them as that. I'd say if you're going to be colouring in large areas, as you'll see, the first layer is going to be very streaky. And again, that's just down to the irregular output of ink from this pen. Just give it another layer. Honestly, it'll be absolutely fine. And don't forget, this is hand drawn as well. It doesn't have to look like it's come straight from a printing press. It's come from a human being's hand. So if things like that are putting you off with your own artwork and making you step back and think, oh, it's not perfect, well, you're a human being. It's not meant to be perfect. There are no perfect human beings, and therefore no perfect art to come from them. It is all subject to opinion. And as well, when you're creating, you do tend to notice all the mistakes as you go along, even if the viewer hasn't. So don't be too hard on yourself there. There are loads of mistakes on here that I'm just not going to tell you about. Also, as well, I feel like I should mention, just as we're coming towards the end of the video, this isn't the first time I've had art blocks since doing this channel. It's just I've usually been a lot more organised, and I just haven't this time. The holiday I went on, I'd sort of prepared everything for that, and then I kind of came back off it again, did a few pieces, and I'm like, that's it, I can't do any more right now. But it does pass, it really does. and you've just got to do whatever you can, or even nothing at all, until you feel comfortable producing stuff you like again. But that really is just my take on things. That's all it is. It's just my experiences. I'm no expert. I do hope, though, that you've found this video useful in some respects. And again, a massive thank you to everyone who's offered their wonderful advice. Honestly, I'm so lucky to have you guys comment on my videos. It really does make my day when I read them. So thank you so much. I do appreciate you guys. Of course, I'm going to ask you lovely lot which one your favourite is, so don't forget to let me know down below. And of course, if you have additional advice to offer to me or anyone else watching this video, please drop it down below. You never know, it might kickstart someone back into the creative process again. In the meantime, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you lovely lot soon. Bye!